The story begins at a university when someone shouts Teisu's name. 23-year-old Han Tae-soo then turns around upon hearing his name called in the hallway. Two girls approach and say they heard from others that he's a pro at attending classes for people. That's when the young man shows his price list for attendance services and school assignments. The young women are surprised and ask if he really charges for that, and the young man confirms. With a straight face, he says that each class attendance costs 10,000 won because nothing in life is free. He then pulls out his phone to close the deal with his new, seemingly excited clients. They say goodbye calling him professor, and Tae-soo simply replies by calling them clients. His friends see the scene and comment on how good the guy is at business, even asking for some help. But one of them asks if there's a friend discount, and Han just shows them the price list. Afterward, he heads to class, thinking that the rent nearby costs 500,000 won. Inside the classroom, the student starts answering the roll call for all his clients of the day. The professor then ends the lesson, and the young man reflects that just existing costs 1 million won a month. Right after class ends, some students notice that Han Tae-soo has already left and speculate why. The girl and her friends start laughing at the idea of him going to meet a girlfriend. They joke that he'd never date anyone and would get into a huge argument with someone over money. But for students without parental help, every second is precious for working hard. That's why we see Tae-soo at various jobs like tutoring to earn some cash. At another moment, the young man is riding his bike in the cold night, making a delivery. For him, all this effort is a necessary investment for his own survival. He checks the price of gold in the game and notices it went up by 200 won, which makes him really happy. Sitting in front of the computer, the young man calculates that he can play until 7 in the morning. Inside the game, his character takes down monsters, and he thinks how nice it would be if life were like that. Other players are impressed by his damage and comment on his fame on the server. Suddenly, an annoyed voice yells at his character while the young man is focused. Then a player with a bizarre skin appears and starts yelling at the guy for no apparent reason. The stranger says that hunting area belongs to his guild and tells the young man to leave. But Tae-soo completely ignores the warnings and continues farming, which makes the other person furious. Reading the hateful messages in the chat, he just thinks that there are a lot of weirdos on the internet. The scene then cuts to a police station where there has apparently been some trouble. Someone complains, saying they didn't start the argument and that the others provoked them first. Han is there too and wonders why he's the only one getting told off by the police. Just then, a police officer points to the girl and says she's the owner of the account, Fallen Power Angel. The girl in question is named Chae, and she stares at the student with a serious expression. They both look at each other, confused, and the young man repeats her name as she repeats his. It seems to dawn on both of them at the same time, and they recognize each other with great surprise. The girl gets super excited and points at him with a shout of surprise and excitement. The police officer asks if they know each other, while the young woman calls him the real Han Tae-soo. With a smile on her face, she confirms that they know each other very well, in fact. Then she hugs him and reveals to the officer that he is her ex-boyfriend from 5 years ago. Tae-soo's mind takes him back to high school, where he remembers what Chae was like. Back then, she was a quiet girl who kept to herself and had almost no presence in the classroom. With her glasses and shy demeanor, the young woman wasn't the type of person who drew much attention. She spent most of her time reading books until one day she handed him a note. We then see the young man saying goodbye to her in the empty classroom after school. With a smile, he says he'll see her later and leaves her holding the small piece of paper. The girl has a surprised expression on her face but seems happy with the invitation. To the young man, she was just an ordinary person you could find anywhere. But as the years went by, the memories he had of her gradually faded. However, there was one thing the student still remembered with perfect clarity. The day they broke up was when her family moved out of town overnight. He becomes thoughtful, as they had even planned to meet on that fateful day. The young man always wondered why she left without saying anything, and thinks about asking now. But the girl seems annoyed and complains that he filed a complaint against her without even talking to her first. Faced with her reaction, the young man begins to wonder if she really is the same person. After all, only a few years had passed, but the change in her appearance was drastic. He even thinks she's changed so much that she now looks like a troublemaker. Despite the shock, the student concludes that it's not entirely impossible for someone to change so much. The young man remembers a class reunion where many people were unrecognizable. But still, her transformation from a nerdy girl to her current look was the most radical. As he walks, he thinks that her vibe is also completely different and unrecognizable. With an irritated look, the girl turns and faces him, looking like a completely new person. Chae then asks why the young man is following her, and he's a bit confused by the question. She accuses him of regretting getting 100,000 won over a few insults. The young man thinks that he expected her to laugh about the situation since they were old friends. The young woman calls him petty, and he wonders if she was always this talkative. Tae-soo explains that he isn't following her, that this is just the way to his house. The girl says she might apologize for the insults, but never for his terrible manners in the game. In a serious tone, she warns him that he was lucky to have run into her and not someone else. He then threatens to go back to the police station and reminds her that he gave her a generous discount. His ex-girlfriend gives him a dirty look upon hearing the student's sharp response. Suddenly, she changes tactics and tries to make a cute face, asking him to forgive the debt. But the young man doesn't fall for her act and states that he'll get his 10,000 won one way or another. Seeing that it didn't work, she comments on how good he is with money and that he'll be rich. The student calls her by her name, and the young woman asks what he wants now in an impatient tone. A bit awkwardly, the young man asks how she's been all this time she was gone. The question catches her by surprise, and she stares at him with wide eyes, not knowing what to say. With a smile, she comments that he was surprised because she's changed a lot in recent years. Mia says that he used to never care about what other people were doing. Then she ends the conversation by saying that in any case, nothing worth mentioning happened. The young woman says they won't see each other again, and that all that matters is that she pays the debt on time. With a smile, the girl suggests they shouldn't be curious about each other anymore. The student looks serious as she tells him not to care about each other from now on. With a cold look, his ex-girlfriend suggests they leave as if the other doesn't exist. Then Mia says goodbye with a wave and walks away, leaving the young man behind alone. The young man reflects that those were the last words from his old flame after 5 years. He gets annoyed, thinking he should be the angry one, since she was the one who vanished. The young man didn't ask for the money out of need, but for another special reason. Since he's not good with words, this was the best way he found to talk to her. In reality, the student just wanted a reason to keep her around a little longer. Watching her walk away, he accepts that this was the definitive end for them. A month passes and an announcement is made over the sound system at Seodan University. A girl with glasses and a sweatshirt looks tired as she listens to the college announcement. The announcer calls for Representative Chamiya, and Tae-soo is stunned to hear that name. To the surprise of both, they meet again in the university hallway. The young man is shocked and can hardly believe he's seen the girl there again. The young woman, now with her old look, is super embarrassed by the reunion. The scene then shifts to a moving truck in front of a residential building. From his apartment window, Tae-soo notices someone is moving in. He finds it curious, as it's already been 4 days since the start of the semester. The young man thinks that his apartment is the only one nearby with such cheap and affordable rent. Looking at his phone, he remembers that most of the residents are students and thinks of Mia. A memory of their reunion at the university comes to his mind, and he can hardly believe it. At that moment, they stared at each other in the hallway as the announcement called her to the room. With a look of shock, the student asked what on earth she was doing in that place. The girl reacted badly and accused him of being a creepy stalker, which left the young man confused. He then stops her from calling the police and tells her to stop talking nonsense. The young man shows his student ID, proving that he also studies there in the same major as her. Then it clicks and he realizes this makes her his junior at the college. But the young woman doesn't seem to care and asks disdainfully what difference that makes. She reminds him of what she said before about them, pretending they don't know each other at all. With a smile, the girl tells him, as her upperclassman, to mind his own business and leave her alone. His ex-girlfriend faces him with a confident and determined expression in her decision. The young woman states that it will be better for both of them if they go their separate ways. Tae-soo is left confused and wonders why that would be better for them in the end. He remembers her harsh words from the night before and doesn't understand the reason for so much anger. Back in the present, the young man tries to convince himself to forget it and that it's just an attachment. But upon seeing the moving truck, he starts to consider the possibility of it being her. He thinks it's impossible, but suddenly the doorbell of his apartment starts to ring. Upon opening the door, the student comes face to face with Mia, who has become his new neighbor. With a cute face, the girl introduces herself as the new neighbor and says she hopes they get along. But in reality, the scene is much more tense, and she just offers him a rice cake. In a swift move, his ex-girlfriend simply shoves the rice cake in his face. Then she freaks out and accuses him of being a stalker, but he thinks she's the one who showed up there. The young man confirms that the apartment is his and asks if she plans on moving out soon. The young woman gets a sour look on her face as she realizes the situation she's gotten into. Chamiya gets annoyed for having signed the contract just because it was cheap, without checking the neighbors. She then reinforces the idea that they should act as if the other doesn't even exist there. The student just watches her from the door, without saying a word about the proposed agreement. Sarcastically, he calls her mom and in return gets a door slammed in his face. On the other side, Mia despairs as she realizes she overheard something she shouldn't have. The young man tries to talk, but she threatens him with a fire extinguisher to make him back away. Now it's official, his ex-girlfriend from 5 years ago is his new next-door neighbor. A memory from the past shows the girl reading in the library during sunset. Back then, the student used to sleep on the desk while she was nearby. That time of day in the library was also the young couple's favorite moment. Back in the present, he looks at the rice cake and wonders why she's changed so much. As he eats a piece, he tries to understand what made her look at him like she wanted to take him out. The young man wonders if he did something wrong back then but can't remember. He then concludes that she was the one who broke the promise and didn't show up for their date. A short time later, the doorbell rings again, and the young man wonders who it is this time. He goes to the door to answer but decides to check the intercom before opening. On the small screen, the student sees the image of Chamiya with a very strange appearance. Opening the door, he questions her about their agreement to pretend they don't know each other. All wet and shivering, she calls him the guy from room 3, a one with a weak voice. It turns out her apartment is completely flooded, and the young man is startled. He then quickly finds the water main and shuts the valve to stop the leak. The young man says she should call the landlord, but the young woman says he isn't answering. Seeing the whole mess, Tisu regrets not having rented a better place. His ex-girlfriend is super frustrated that this happened on her very first day of moving in. Just then, the student remembers a moment from the past when he saw her shivering from the cold in the snow. Back then, he helped her warm up in a situation very similar to the one now. Back in the present, she notices the young man staring at her and gets suspicious. The girl accuses him of looking at her, but he denies it, saying he wasn't doing anything of the sort. With her clothes all wet, her appearance ends up catching the young man's attention. He gets all embarrassed and swears he wasn't thinking about anything weird. With a serious look, the student just says he was worried about her health. The unexpected answer catches the girl by surprise and leaves her speechless for a moment. He then pulls her inside, saying she'll catch a cold as she stays wet. But she resists and attacks him with the squeegee, yelling that he can't be thinking that. With an annoyed face, the young woman thanks him for the help, but says she doesn't want to owe him anything. She then tells the young man to mind his own business, but he still worries if she'll be okay. But with the main valve closed, the heater also turns off, and the girl starts to freeze from the cold. Even while shivering, his ex-girlfriend tries to look strong and says everything's fine, but he calls her stubborn. Seeing her stubbornness, the student makes a proposal of 1,001 for every hour she spends there. The girl is completely shocked by the idea and asks what on earth he's talking about. He explains that it's the price to warm up, and if she pays, she won't owe him any favors. The young man looks away, a little embarrassed, as he repeats the price of 1,001 to the young woman. She thinks about the proposal, and the young man says the price is actually quite reasonable for the situation. With her face slightly red, the girl seems to accept the offer, and he continues to talk about it. But she interrupts him and says she'll add one more condition for their deal to work. The student looks at her with a tired expression, wondering what's coming next. With his arms crossed, he waits outside, questioning if this was a good idea. It turns out the girl is taking a shower, and he just wanted her to dry off until the landlord arrived. His ex-girlfriend enjoys the hot shower and even offered an extra 3,001 for it. The young man finds it strange how she suddenly let her guard down after so much suspicion. In the flooded hallway, he feels a weird sensation in his chest, but it's not a good one. With cold sweat dripping down, he realizes he forgot something very important that was going to happen. Suddenly, his friends show up all excited, and he remembers he had made plans with them. His buddies ask why he's outside, and the young man complains that they arrived too early. His friends arrive being dramatic, saying they rushed over when they heard about the flood. But they notice the water is coming from the apartment next door, and Tisu is at a loss for words. The young man panics because if they go inside, they'll find Chamiya and they're getting ready. He can already imagine the endless teasing from his friends, asking about the girl and if she's pretty. So, to avoid the hassle, the student suggests they go out for drinks somewhere else. The young man makes up an excuse that his apartment is a mess and offers to pay the bill for the night. His friends freak out at the offer because they know their friend is the biggest cheapskate there is. They even joke about taking him to the hospital, but the young man just wants them to leave quickly. Seeing the golden opportunity, his friends accept the proposal on the spot without a second thought. His plan was to send them ahead so he could get the girl out of there without anyone seeing. But right at the crucial moment, his ex-girlfriend comes out of the shower and appears in front of everyone. She looks confused seeing the strangers and asks who they are with an innocent face. His friends' jaws drop when they see a girl coming out of the shower, and the young man despairs. The guys then lose it and start shaking the student, asking who the young woman is. Pushed against the wall, the young man needs to think of a very quick answer to the situation. He then hugs the girl and says she's his younger sister, to her surprise. Chamiya is completely shocked by the blatant lie and shouts in disbelief. His friends don't buy the story either and say it's impossible for her to be his relative. In desperation, the young man whispers for her to play along and avoid more trouble with them. Understanding the situation, the young woman changes her expression and confirms she's his little sister. But the situation gets even more tense when another hand grabs the wall tightly. A new girl with orange hair appears with a scary smile and asks if that's really the case. She then enters the hallway and questions the young man about the story she's hearing. The young woman says she's known him for over 10 years, and this is the first time she's heard about a sister. Then, 21-year-old Naheun asks what the real relationship is between the two of them. The scene then cuts to the next morning on the university campus with a calmer atmosphere. The young man's childhood friend still seems annoyed by the story and asks if he's serious. With a sleepy face, the student just confirms that he made it all up the night before. Haeyoon can't believe he said the girl was his sister, just to throw his friends off. She then asks if nothing happened between them, and the young man denies it once more. In a flashback, we see a repair notice on his ex-girlfriend's apartment door. Apparently, the landlord showed up shortly after to fix the flooding problem. With that, the young woman was able to go back to her room, and things calmed down in the hallway. Back in the present, his friend says she believes him because he's not the type to lie to her. The girl completely trusts his word, but says she wouldn't believe the other guys. After all, she's known him for over 10 years and knows very well what he's really like. Haeyoon is the youngest daughter of a family that owns a large taekwondo academy. That's why even though she's small, she always had a talent for fighting and became a local legend. Her nickname in town was the Mad Chihuahua, which says a lot about her personality. As they walk, the young woman says she has something more important to talk about with her friend. His childhood friend asks if the girl was really Mia, and the young man plays dumb. She freaks out, saying that his ex-girlfriend has changed so much and doesn't seem like the same person. The orange-haired girl says that despite her appearance, she feels like she's looking at someone else. Haeyoon gets serious and wonders why she disappeared without a word after everything that happened. Suddenly, a voice interrupts the conversation, and the orange-haired girl gets a huge scare. Senior student Song Hee-soo, who is 24, appears and says good morning to the group. The council president thanks them for their help, as they are short on members at the moment. With a concerned look, the senior asks if the young man isn't busy with his jobs. He replies that he quit a few jobs to be able to help, leaving his friend shocked. The student says he managed to get some extra income and is ready for whatever comes his way. His childhood friend pouts, thinking about how differently he acts around the other girl. The group starts carrying boxes, and the girl wonders what else he's hiding from her. The council president gives orders to organize everything in the best way possible. The young man reveals that the person he currently likes is his senior, Song Hee-soo. But his friends show up and start teasing him for doing volunteer work. One of his buddies looks at him with a mischievous smile and says they already know everything. His friend then reveals he knows it's all because of a girl, making him embarrassed. The group comments on how amazing and next level this year's freshman girls are. But for them, the girl who stood out the most was the one with the student last night. Then it clicks, and his friends remember the weird scene between him and Haeyoon the day before. The student then turns his back to his friends to try to cut off the awkward topic. Losing patience, he tells everyone to get back to work, and his childhood friend eagerly agrees. After organizing all the boxes, the day's work finally comes to an end for the group. The council president thanks everyone for their hard work and help with everything. She reminds them about the meeting time for the next day, and the group says their goodbyes and leaves. But the senior calls the young man and his childhood friend over for a quick chat before they go. With a smile, she thanks him for coming to help even though they aren't on the council. The president then invites them to go for drinks together after the camp, and the young man accepts. He gets so excited that he says he'll go even if he gets into an accident, and the senior laughs at his exaggeration. The scene then cuts to the sunset over the city, marking the end of another day. Arriving home, the student thinks about how Maya's return has shaken him up a bit, but he tries to focus on the present and remembers that his crush now is the senior Hee-soo. In the hallway, he runs into his ex-girlfriend, and the two stand in awkward silence. The young man notices that her bag is full of snacks and is a little surprised by it. With a look of amazement, he just lets out a wow upon seeing the amount of food. He then comments that if she eats all of that, she'll end up gaining weight, and the young woman gets annoyed. His ex-girlfriend freaks out, saying it's none of his business what she eats and tells him to shut up. She then explains herself, saying she bought everything to share with everyone the next day. But the student bursts her bubble and informs her that the snacks have already been bought by the club. It dawns on her, and she realizes that he's also going to the college training camp. With a bored expression, the student listens to his ex-girlfriend ask him not to go to the camp. She says that as a senior, he's already been many times, and this is her first time as a freshman. The young man loses his patience and glares at her angrily, getting closer for a serious talk. He then asks what exactly is bothering her so much and what he did that was so wrong. With a dark look, the girl replies that he's actually the one who did something wrong. The young man tries to argue, but she interrupts him, asking him to at least state the reason for his anger. She then slaps his hand away, pushing him back with a sudden and unexpected gesture. With her face covered by shadows, his ex-girlfriend says he's right and that it's her fault. The girl then repeats her request for him not to act like he knows her and walks away. The student tries to call her back, but she enters her apartment and slams the door shut. Alone in the hallway, the young man is left completely confused and wonders why everything ends up like this. The scene then cuts to the day of the training camp in front of the university. The council president shows up with some bad news for the people waiting. It turns out a lot of people decided to go at the last minute, and now there's no more room on the bus. The senior then asks the young man and his ex-girlfriend to go with her in a separate car from the group. The group starts getting on the bus while the three of them wait there to go by car. The two of them stare at each other in silence, and the tense atmosphere between them is clearly visible to outsiders. The bus departs for the campsite, leaving just the three of them behind at the university. Inside the vehicle, the students are having fun and chatting excitedly as the trip begins. But the young man's childhood friend seems worried and looks back with a serious expression. A classmate asks what's wrong, and the young man's childhood friend tries to play it cool. The other girl then teases her, asking if she's like that because she can't see her, Hubi. Haeyoon gets all flustered and denies the accusation, but her classmate finds her reaction cute. The young woman then says the young man was going to ride in senior Hisu's car, making her worried. To make matters worse, her classmate reveals that another freshman girl was also going in the car. Upon hearing the name Mia, the student's childhood friend is completely shocked and speechless. The scene then cuts to the senior's car parked in front of the university. The council president asks if the two of them are ready to go and if they've forgotten anything. The ex-girlfriend confirms that everything is fine, but the young man appears wearing a helmet. The freshman is confused and asks what he's doing with that on his head inside a car. The student explains that it's for safety and hands another helmet to the girl to wear as well. His logic is that if it were a bumper car, they wouldn't need to wear helmets. Before she can process the information, the car takes off at high speed with the three of them. The senior drives like a race car driver, and the ex-girlfriend screams in desperation at the situation. After a while, the car stops at a gas station for a short break from the crazy ride. The freshman is completely worn out, looking like her soul has left her body from the dangerous driving. Passed out on a park bench, she wonders if she passed away and went to heaven or something. But it's actually the young man who appears with a drink and says she looked like an angel of light. The student explains that the senior's driving is famous and that her car doesn't have a single scratch. He then hands her the drink, and the girl asks why he's giving it to her. The young woman refuses the drink and says she doesn't like coffee, which makes the young man thoughtful. Tae-soo is quite surprised by her answer and doesn't quite understand what's going on. He then asks if she really doesn't like coffee because he had a different memory. A memory from the past shows the two of them together, and she seemed to like the drink back then. The young man says he remembers them drinking it in the park, but she suggests he's mistaken her for someone else. With a sad look, the girl says maybe she used to like it before but doesn't remember clearly now. She then claims that she doesn't recall these old stories and wants to forget the past. Chamiya calls him by his full name, and he looks at her, waiting for what she'll say next. In a serious tone, the ex-girlfriend starts by saying she's very sorry for what she's about to say. The young woman explains that she doesn't want to be stuck in useless memories of a past that's over. She then asks if they can just treat each other like complete strangers from now on. The young man thinks about how she knows how much he suffered, and that these memories drive him crazy. Even so, the student decides to take a step forward to try to resolve the situation. He thinks that since they've met again, he can't just pretend he doesn't know her anymore. But the girl bows and begs him to please treat her like a stranger. She asks to be treated like a normal freshman and apologizes for her harsh words from before. The young man understands that this was the most polite and decisive rejection he has ever received. With that, the image of the old Mia he knew shatters into 1,000 pieces forever. He then wonders why she recognized him at the police station if she wanted to be a stranger. If she had just pretended not to know him from the beginning, everything would have been different. The senior finds him distracted on the park bench and asks what he's doing there. Awkwardly, the young man says he's just watching the clouds, and she finds the answer strange. The council president asks if that's fun, and he admits it's not all that great. The student thinks that what his ex-girlfriend said makes sense, as 5 years is a long time. The senior then gets a call and tells the person that they are arriving soon. Tae-soo reflects that the time they spent together and apart isn't so different. The senior notices he's deep in thought and asks if there's anything wrong with the young man. With a flushed face, he tries to hide his embarrassment and focuses on what's happening. The young man realizes that in his heart now he has only one clear objective. He compliments the choice of location for the camp, and the senior is super happy about it. The president says they wanted it to be memorable since it's the last one before graduation. With a determined smile, the young man thinks that his only goal is to confess to the senior. The scene then shows the can of coffee that his ex-girlfriend refused, thrown in the park's trash. Even with her return, he affirms that his heart will not waver in its decision. The senior then asks about the freshman, and the young man says she went for a walk. Suddenly, his ex-girlfriend appears fully geared up with a helmet and protective clothing. The council president finds the freshman amusing, and the young man just watches her, confused. The senior then asks if her driving is really that scary to require all that gear. With the helmet on his head, the student vehemently denies it, and the senior finds his reaction funny. The scene then cuts to their arrival at the lodge at 11:15 in the morning on the same day. At the lodge, a student comments that the freshman was the victim of the senior's driving this year. Another girl says that probably only senior Tae-soo can emerge unscathed from that ride. Suddenly, a hand touches the young man's shoulder while he's carrying some boxes. A freshman calls out to him, and he turns to see what the girl wants from him at that moment. The newcomer, 20-year-old Shin Dabin, asks if he has a minute to talk with her. The student's childhood friend sees the scene from afar and gets an intense gleam in her eyes. After the orientation, senior Hisu announces the end of the day's activities. With a drink in her hand, she says it's now time for a casual get-together with plenty of drinks. The president explains that the groups have already been divided for everyone to have fun together. She then raises her beer can and proposes a toast to the excited crowd. The young man is in a group with his childhood friend and the freshman who called him over earlier. But to everyone's surprise, his ex-girlfriend also ends up in the same group as them. The students' group is the only one with 1 guy and 5 girls, which makes him tense. The other guys stare at him with envious looks, and he feels a bit uncomfortable. The freshman then approaches and clinks her beer can against his for a special toast. With an excited smile, the newcomer proposes a toast just between the two of them at that moment. She encourages him to chug the can, but his childhood friend glares at him with a furious look. Suddenly, Hyun shouts an enthusiastic cheers, and forcefully clinks her cans against theirs. The student watches the scene from the corner of his eye as everything unfolds around him. His ex-girlfriend just drinks her beer in silence without interacting with anyone in the group. Suddenly, the young man notices that his ex-girlfriend is staring at him with a serious expression. He turns to her, confused, but the girl quickly looks away without saying anything. The freshman then asks if they need to toast every time before they drink together. The student feels a bit awkward and takes a sip of his beer to hide his nervousness. He observes the other girls in the group and feels that the night will be quite tiring for him. With so many different personalities together, he has a bad feeling about the camp. It turns out this year's camp had many more people than usual for one reason. The reason was a trio of freshman influencers who attracted everyone's attention. The first of them was Hai Eunji, a study vlogger who did live streams online. She started streaming in the 9th grade and now has 40,000 subscribers on her channel. The second was Du Yeonwoo, who had a very popular horror-themed radio channel. And last but not least, the newcomer Shin Daebin, who was the most famous of the trio. With over 320,000 subscribers, she was a well-known gaming influencer. The girl pretends to be humble but is clearly the most popular among the 3 famous freshmen. The young man then remembers a message from the senior explaining that she put him with them to avoid trouble. Seeing the envious glares from the other guys, he understands why so many people showed up at the camp. Suddenly, the famous freshman freaks out upon hearing the name of a game and gets super excited. She says she's also been playing since childhood and asks which server the young man currently plays on. The student is a bit surprised by the coincidence but replies that he plays on the same one as her. Then one of the girls remembers that his ex-girlfriend also plays on that same server. With a mischievous smile, his ex-girlfriend plays dumb and pretends not to know anything. The famous freshman then talks about a notorious gold farmer who has the same name as the young man. Without much thought, the student admits in front of everyone that he is that player. The revelation shocks the newcomer, who freezes upon discovering the senior's true identity. The scene then cuts to the lodge's bathroom, where the girl is trying to process the information. Washing her hands at the sink, the freshman remembers something and seems to have a plan in mind. With a burst of anger and excitement, the newcomer confirms that the player she was looking for was him. The other girl from the trio says she suspected it from the beginning because of the coincidences. With a look of hatred, the famous streamer grits her teeth and reveals the reason for her search. It turns out the young man's ex-girlfriend was her master in the game and abandoned everything because of him. With tears in her eyes, the master says goodbye to her followers and leaves the guild forever. The freshman blames the student for preventing her and her master from defeating the final boss. She then reveals her wicked plan to seduce the young man to get revenge for what he did. With a confident smile, the newcomer says she has never failed to seduce someone she wanted. The girl imagines a romantic scene where the two fall madly in love with each other. And then, at the peak of their romance, when he confesses, she will crush him without mercy. Her friend thinks the plan is a bit silly, but the freshman is determined to get revenge for her master. The scene then cuts to the two of them outside the lodge in the middle of the cold night. The newcomer complains about the cold and having to use the outside bathroom because of the line. She says she didn't want to use the one outside because it's freezing, but she has no other choice. The girl complains that this happens when there are too many people in one place. Suddenly, she comes across a group of big, strong guys staring at her in the dark. One of them finds her cute, and the girl panics as she recognizes the upperclassmen. She then runs back to the lodge, screaming for the seniors for help. The newcomer's friend realizes something is wrong and gets worried about the situation. The horror radio girl screams her friend's name and runs to see what happened. But the famous freshman seems to be in serious trouble, and her expression is one of pain. It turns out she's surrounded by members of the university's wrestling team. The group asks for autographs, and the situation turns into an impromptu fan event at the camp. The news spreads, and other students rush to get an autograph from the famous girl. The senior asks the young man and his childhood friend for help to control the crowd of fans. Suddenly, a hand pulls on the student's shirt as he prepares to help. His ex-girlfriend holds him back and asks him not to leave because there's a problem in the dorm. She looks at him with a serious expression and says there's something wrong in the girl's room. The girl leads him to the location, and the student wonders what could be so important. Arriving there, he hesitates to enter, but the young woman says they need to see for themselves. Carefully, he enters the room and tries to listen to what's happening on the other side. The ex-girlfriend points to an outlet on the wall, and the young man is confused by the gesture. He then gets closer and sees something strange plugged into the outlet behind some suitcases. With the help of her phone, the girl shows that the object is actually a hidden camera. The young man is completely shocked by the discovery and can hardly believe what he's seeing. His ex-girlfriend silences him before he can scream and reveal their presence in the room. Outside, the student asks how she knew about the camera's existence. He comments that the object is very discreet and that most people wouldn't notice it. The young woman explains that she's seen something similar before but quickly tries to change the subject. She says that what's important isn't how she found out, but other more urgent matters. The girl starts to question who, when, and where the camera was installed in the room. The young man remembers that what was always most important to her was the how of things. A memory from the past shows the young woman with a radiant smile and a sparkle in her eyes. Back then, she approached him in the library to ask a question about something. But suddenly, the girl just rested her head on the table, looking very tired. The student asks if that's why she's always reading in the school library. The young woman explains that she loves following the flow of thought in books and asking, why? The young man remembers that this was her catchphrase in the past and how she used it. He thinks about how the girl insisted on using the phrase even when it didn't make sense. Back in the present, his ex-girlfriend asks why he's staring at her like that. The student says that her polite way of speaking sounds strange coming from her now. The girl gets embarrassed and admits that it must be weird to call him that now. She apologizes and says that he's the only one she can talk to about this. Understanding the situation, the young man holds her hand and prepares to act and resolve it. The girl says she can speak casually if he wants and seems more relaxed. Then, the ex-girlfriend asks for the senior's help to solve the mystery of the camera. She remembers how good he was at solving mysteries back in school and trusts him. The young woman admits it's strange to ask for a favor like this, but she had no one else to help. The young man questions if she's still going to pretend they are strangers, and she insists on her request. He asks if the camera was installed by the dorm owners, but she dismisses the idea. The girl says she checked other rooms, and hers was the only one with the hidden device. She also rules out the possibility of it being one of the guys because of the surveillance. The ex-girlfriend explains that she felt sick all day and didn't leave the room at all. She's certain that the camera wasn't there when she first arrived at the dorm earlier. The first time she noticed something strange was shortly before the orientation began. This means that the person who installed the camera was in the room during that time. The suspicion then falls on the 3 girls who were sharing the room with her. The horror radio girl Du Yanwu is one of the possible suspects in the crime. The famous streamer Shin Daebin also joins the list of people who could have done it. And the study vlogger Haeunji completes the trio of suspicious roommates. The ex-girlfriend also considers the possibility of it being someone close to one of them. The young man concludes that if all this is true, the culprit is someone from within the group. In other words, someone from the department is acting with bad intentions at the camp. He asks her not to tell anyone for now, and the girl agrees with the plan. The young man explains that rumors can hurt innocent people if they spread. The ex-girlfriend suggests telling Senior Hee-soo because she seems trustworthy. With flushed cheeks, the student gets embarrassed at the mention of the council president. The young woman notices his reaction and asks if the senior is the person he likes. The young man gets all flustered and tries to deny it, but the girl insists he's lying. Suddenly, their childhood friend appears out of nowhere and startles them both with her presence. With her eyes spinning, she glares at them and asks what the 2 of them were doing alone. The student asks if she's drunk, and the young woman starts asking strange questions. She says she got rid of the wrestling guys who were bothering her earlier. The childhood friend pouts and seems very annoyed about something that's bothering her. The ex-girlfriend tries to talk to her, but the other girl seems very uncomfortable. Then the orange-haired young woman explodes and starts questioning the other about her intentions. She reminds her of saying that everything was a coincidence and that she didn't want anything to do with the young man anymore. The childhood friend accuses the other of secretly calling the student in the middle of the night. Crying, she calls her a liar and confronts her about her true feelings. The young woman says she had told her she didn't like him anymore and that everything was over. Then the orange-haired girl simply passes out drunk in front of the 2 of them. The young man carries his friend back to the room, and the first night of the camp ends like that. They decide to keep the camera a secret until they are sure who the culprit is. The next morning, the lodge wakes up to a new day and new surprises ahead. The student observes a commotion and wonders if the girls are fighting over something. Suddenly, he hears a scream and his gaze turns toward the commotion. A girl points at his ex-girlfriend and shouts that she saw her doing something suspicious. The study vlogger accuses her roommate of trying to spy on their room. The girl claims that the young man's ex-girlfriend installed a camera to watch everyone. The senior tries to calm things down and ask everyone to settle down and talk. The crowd starts whispering about the camera, and the childhood friend gets worried. The orange-haired girl clings to the young man and asks what's going on there. She can't believe that his ex-girlfriend would do something as terrible as that. With a slight smile, the student tries to reassure his childhood friend and calm her down. He hugs her and tells her not to worry, because there's no way her roommate could have done that. The ex-girlfriend watches the scene and thinks that she didn't expect the other to attack her head on. With a serious look, she stares at the study vlogger and realizes that she is the culprit. The girl Haeunji is a famous YouTuber and also shares the room with the young man's ex. At the welcome party, she acted super friendly, which made her uncomfortable. The student offers to intervene, but the ex-girlfriend says she can handle it. The young woman thinks about how quick he is to notice things and is impressed by it. In a flashback from the previous night, she asks if he really wants to stop looking for the culprit. The young man explains that it would be difficult to question all the girls to find out the truth. With a clever smile, he reveals his plan to make the culprit reveal themselves. The girl is confused by the plan, but the young man seems very confident in the idea. He explains that the culprit will have to come back to get the camera, and she gets worried. The student then asks when people let their guard down, and she thinks it's a riddle. He answers that it's right in the morning when they wake up, and she still doesn't get it. The young man explains that sleeping well means the person was relaxed and without worries. That would be the perfect moment to grab the device and force the culprit to act. With the plan in motion, the ex-girlfriend waits for the right moment to put everything into practice. The only people who know about the plan are him, the senior, and the ex-girlfriend herself. But suddenly, the accuser appears and says she saw the girl hiding the camera in the morning. The vlogger challenges her roommate to deny it and says that other people also saw the scene. The other two freshmen confirm the story and say they saw what happened. One of them says she saw the young man's ex-girlfriend going through her things in the morning. The culprit is now accusing the victim in front of everyone in an unexpected way. The young man is unsure whether to intervene, as it could complicate the situation even more. But his ex-girlfriend seems to have an ace up her sleeve and smiles confidently. She then pulls a toothbrush from her pocket and says that's what she was hiding. With an ironic smile, the girl asks what the other means by a camera. The vlogger gets flustered and tries to stammer a reply to her roommate's question. The accuser gets all tangled up and tries to invent an excuse for what she just said. She then says she heard her roommate talking about videos of famous people on her phone. With a confident smile, the young man's ex-girlfriend asks if the other wants to see her phone. The vlogger is shocked by the proposal and doesn't know how to react in front of the crowd. The girl says that since she was accused of recording something, she can prove her innocence right there. She offers her phone for the other to check anything she wants and prove she's wrong. With impressive calmness, the ex-girlfriend says that afterward she just needs to apologize. She then gathers her things and asks if she needs to show everything for them to believe her. The vlogger's eye twitches nervously, not knowing what to do next. The young man's ex-girlfriend starts emptying her bag in front of everyone there. The accuser panics upon seeing her roommate's determination to prove her innocence. The young woman shows everything she brought and says she doesn't need to show the snacks she shared. The senior tries to intervene, but the ex-girlfriend says it's fine and continues to defend herself. The vlogger is paralyzed with fear upon seeing that her plan is falling apart. With that, the student realizes that the case is closed and the truth has come to light. He thinks that the culprit could only be one of his ex-girlfriend's roommates. The strategy of making the culprit reveal themselves worked perfectly as he planned. The young man also put a bit of hand cream on the camera to identify the culprit. But since no one tried to take the device, he deduced that they didn't know about the discovery. With this advantage, the student knew that the culprit couldn't predict the next move. His original plan was to wait for the panicked culprit to contact them first. But the vlogger's bold move changed everything, and now she will have to face the consequences. The young man thinks about how his ex-girlfriend manages to stay calm even while being accused. The vlogger freaks out and says they still haven't checked all the possible places in the lodge. In desperation, she asks them to search her roommate's body for the camera. With a crazed look, the girl insists on the search, leaving everyone shocked. The scene then cuts to a moment later with the ex-girlfriend changing her clothes. The young man approaches and puts his jacket over her shoulders with a serious look. The young woman is surprised by the gesture and looks at him, not understanding the senior's action. He asks if it was really necessary to go that far to prove her innocence. With a grateful look, the girl just thanks him for his support and help. After a complete search of the lodge, the camera was not found anywhere. The vlogger then gives up and apologizes, crying for having caused all the trouble. The senior tries to calm the situation and asks everyone to put the story behind them. The young man's ex-girlfriend decides to forgive her roommate and close the matter for good right there. The student thinks about how the girl went too far, but still managed to get away with it. The ex-girlfriend then approaches the council president and calls her over to talk. She asks if she can take the vlogger for a private conversation, which scares the other girl. With a smile, she invites her for a drink to sort things out amicably. The senior then asks the young man for help with something else while they talk. The ex-girlfriend takes her roommate to a more private place so they can talk alone. She then questions her about the real reason for installing the camera in the room. The vlogger stares at the camera with a fearful look and doesn't know how to react to the question. The student explains that his ex-girlfriend didn't want to escalate the situation, which is why she acted. The culprit then questions why he has the camera, and the childhood friend appears. With a quick gesture, the young man reveals that his friend had the device the whole time. The orange-haired girl surprises the vlogger and holds her tightly so she can't run away. It turns out the camera was never found during the search because his childhood friend took it. The young man's ex-girlfriend just pretended to look for the camera, but actually hid it. The student then used the senior's name to call the other girls and empty the room. With the room empty, his childhood friend took the camera and stored it without anyone seeing. The young man explains that everything was planned to confuse the culprit and make her give herself up. The vlogger found herself in a no-win situation and didn't have time to think of an excuse. The student says she tried to appear calm, but her nervousness gave her away in the end. He reveals that the only one who looked at the outlet upon leaving was the vlogger, and that exposed her. With the truth revealed, the young man shows the camera's memory card with the evidence. On the card, they find a video of the vlogger herself turning on the camera in the room. Besides that video, there were others, but they all had one thing in common. The camera was always pointed at the suitcases and not at the people in the room. The vlogger then confesses everything and says she had no ill intentions with the recording. She explains that because she's famous, her things were often stolen, which is why she used the camera. The girl couldn't erase the data in time and didn't expect anyone to notice the device. The vlogger panicked, afraid that her roommate would use the camera against her. She knew the camera had a button to erase the data and tried to get it back. In desperation, the girl decided to strike first to try to fix the situation. The young man's ex-girlfriend understands the situation and forgives her roommate for the misunderstanding. The student thinks she already suspected it, which is why she came to him instead of the police. The young woman then says she will trust the vlogger and accepts her apology in the end. The young man and his childhood friend are surprised by the ex-girlfriend's generous attitude. The vlogger cries with emotion and asks if she's serious about the forgiveness. She feels guilty for everything she did and can't believe her roommate's kindness. The young man's ex-girlfriend looks at her with a serious gaze and an unreadable expression. With a chilling calm, she says she doesn't care about what happened there. She doesn't want to ruin the department's atmosphere, so she'll let the story go. But with a threatening look, the girl says that if the other is lying about anything, then she will bitterly regret ever crossing her path at the camp. The childhood friend wonders if that is really the same person she used to know. The young man also reflects on how his ex-girlfriend has become a different person. In a flashback from the previous night, the young woman thanks the student for his help with her friend. She admits she was worried and that he could have ignored her after everything. The young man watches her as she walks away and thinks about what happened between them. With a smile, the ex-girlfriend admits that maybe she misunderstood him a little. The young man watches the girls walk away and reflects on what happened at the camp. With the confusion resolved, the camp ends peacefully and without any more problems. They respected the ex-girlfriend's wish and kept the secret among themselves in the end. The vlogger calmed down and handed over the device, promising to cooperate with whatever was needed. The other roommates sympathized with the situation and apologized as well. The famous streamer cried and apologized to the young man's ex-girlfriend for the misunderstanding. With a smile, the young woman thanks the senior for all his help during the commotion. She admits she didn't expect his plan to work so well and is impressed. The girl asks what he means by that and seems a little confused by the question. The young man worries if she wasn't embarrassed about taking off her clothes in front of everyone. The ex-girlfriend explains that she got annoyed with the other's insistence and had to act. She defends herself by saying it was just a sports top and it wasn't a big deal. The student gets a bit flustered and doesn't know how to react to the young woman's response. With a flushed face, she says she's not the type of girl who takes her clothes off just anywhere. The girl gets annoyed that he didn't understand right away and runs off embarrassed. The young man thinks that if the vlogger had been lying, he would have called the police on the spot. But he thinks the girl panicked and acted without thinking about the consequences. The ex-girlfriend decides to let it go and says it's none of her business what happens. With a smile, she states that her only goal is to graduate in peace and without any problems. The student thinks about how the girl left an unforgettable mark on him in some way. On a social network, a photo of the vlogger sleeping with her face drawn on is posted. The scene then cuts to the second night of the camp with the group having fun. The vlogger apologizes for the bad atmosphere and promises to liven up the party for everyone. Despite the incidents, the 3-day, 2-night camp ends peacefully. The senior is relieved that everything ended well, and the young man agrees with her. His ex-girlfriend became the center of attention and spent the whole day with the senior girls. The student watches from a distance and thinks she'll be marked by this for at least 3 months. He then remembers that he went to the camp to spend time with the president. The young man laments having missed the opportunity and not having tried anything with the senior. One of his friends notices that the drinks have run out, and the senior is surprised by the news. With a smile, the president asks the student to go get more drinks for the group. He thinks it's a lot to go alone but can't refuse the senior's request. Meanwhile, the others are having fun and making bets with the remaining drinks. The vlogger calls the young man and says it's the perfect time for him to go to the girls' dorm. The student's childhood friend is sleeping, and the others are having fun drawing on her face. The girls invite him to take a group photo, but he decides to go alone anyway. The young man never imagined that the night would end so peacefully after everything. He then wonders what his ex-girlfriend is doing and goes to look for her around the lodge. The student reflects on how much her appearance has changed in the last 5 years. He remembers how she seemed to know a lot about the camera, and is intrigued by it. He wonders how she managed to stay so calm even while being accused by everyone. The young man starts to think that maybe she got involved in something dangerous. Suddenly, he notices something and his gaze shifts as he spots a figure in the distance. A girl is standing alone looking at the starry sky in silence. He approaches and calls her name, recognizing his ex-girlfriend from afar. The young woman turns around, surprised, and asks how he knew she was there. Startled by his presence, the girl starts to run to try to get away. But in her haste, she ends up tripping and falling to the ground with a cry of pain. The student approaches to help and asks if she's okay after the fall. The ex-girlfriend is surprised to see him, and he questions her about her over-the-top reaction. She apologizes and asks him to pretend he didn't see her there, and the young man is confused. The girl notices he's holding the drinks and asks if he was on a mission. She explains that she thought the senior girls had sent him to capture her and bring her back. The young man comments on how intense the others in the department are with her. But the young woman says that despite everything, they are good people, and she feels good. The student observes her and is happy that she's getting along with the group. He confesses that he never imagined a moment like that would happen again. The ex-girlfriend then comments on how the place looks like one they used to know. He remembers the hill behind the school that they used to visit together. The young man smiles and asks if she remembers that time, and she just looks at him. A memory from the past shows a pile of books, including The Lord of the Rings. Back then, they would borrow books and read together until sunset. The young man teases her, remembering how she cried over the death of a book character. With a smile, he says that her tears stained his pants that day. He cherishes this memory as one of the few happy moments from school. The ex-girlfriend looks at him and says he's changed a lot since those distant times. She comments that she doesn't remember him being so laid back, and he agrees with her. The young man says that both he and she are no longer the same kids they used to be. He reflects on how time has passed and they have matured in different ways. The student suggests that now that they'll be seeing each other at school, they should resolve their issues. The young woman listens in silence as he proposes that they apologize for what they did. With a sad smile, she explains that she wanted to keep her distance for both their sakes. The ex-girlfriend apologizes for her harsh words, surprising him with her attitude. The young man then remembers what she said on the day of the college entrance ceremony. That day the girl treated him coldly and told him to mind his own business. She said it would be better for both of them if they went their separate ways. The student becomes thoughtful as he remembers that moment and her expression. The young woman says it wasn't his fault and that she just wanted them to be strangers. She wonders why fate brought them together again after so much time apart. The girl reflects on their reunion at the police station and at school and feels confused. She says that if they hadn't met again, she wouldn't have acted so coldly. With a sad smile, the young woman apologizes to the young man for the way she treated him. But she reiterates that she doesn't want to talk about the past because it was very difficult for her. The student says that if she insists, he can tell her, but it will be hard for both of them. The ex-girlfriend looks at him, and he realizes he can no longer avoid the topic with her. With a somber look, she says that after graduation, he won't see her around anymore. The girl tries to lighten the mood and calls him to go back because it's getting cold there. The young man understands that if he insists on the topic, he might end up reopening old wounds. He knows that if he pushes too hard, he might end up losing her forever with no way back. The student fears that she will disappear again, just like what happened in their past. Suddenly, the senior appears and calls them to come back to the party with the group. The president says that everyone is eagerly waiting for the drinks and hurries them to return. The group rushes to grab the drinks, and the senior yells at them not to push. Other girls find the young man's ex-girlfriend and take her back to the party. He thinks that there's no need to rush as her goal is to graduate no matter what. With that, his first camp as a senior ends, full of new mysteries. The scene then cuts to the road with tire marks from a car on the asphalt. A black car appears at high speed with its headlights on in the darkness. On the way back from the camp, something unexpected happens on the road with them. The senior's car pulls over to the side, and she and the young man get out of the vehicle. The young man gets closer to the senior, and they almost kiss in a moment of distraction. The scene then cuts back to the tire marks on the road after the incident. The student is shocked by what almost happened, and his heart pounds in his chest. He thinks it took him 3 days to finally get some alone time with the senior. His ex-girlfriend notices the mood and calls to get the attention of the two lovebirds. The childhood friend also gets annoyed with the delay and tells them to just leave already. She says it was just gravel and that the car's windshield is intact and undamaged. The young man apologizes to the senior for tripping and says the car is fine and has no problems. His ex-girlfriend regrets not taking the bus and grumbles quietly in the car. The childhood friend hears the grumbling and looks at her with a suspicious expression. She then accuses her of avoiding the bus on purpose to be with the young man. The ex-girlfriend plays dumb and doesn't respond to the other girl's accusation. The childhood friend insists and asks if she still has feelings for the student. She accuses her of missing the bus on purpose even after saying she didn't want him anymore. The orange-haired girl gets annoyed with the hypocrisy and confronts her about her feelings. The ex-girlfriend finds the other's reaction cute and hugs her affectionately to calm her down. The childhood friend freaks out with the hug and doesn't understand the other girl's reaction. With a smile, the ex-girlfriend tells her not to worry because it's nothing like that. She reinforces that it was all a coincidence and that she didn't plan anything to meet the young man. In a flashback, the girl explains to her friend that she no longer has feelings for him. She says her friend doesn't need to worry because she's no longer interested in him. The orange-haired girl still seems suspicious and doesn't fully believe her classmate. With a mischievous smile, the young man's ex-girlfriend offers to help her friend. She proposes to help her get together with the student, and the other girl is shocked by the idea. The childhood friend can't believe the proposal and asks if she's serious. The ex-girlfriend then questions if the young man knows that his childhood friend likes him. The girl gets all embarrassed and says that everyone knows except for the student himself. She explains that he only sees her as a younger sister since they were kids. The childhood friend laments, saying that he feels guilty and pities her. The young man's ex-girlfriend can't hold back her laughter, and the other asks her not to laugh. She then advises her friend not to give up and to try hundreds of times if necessary. The young woman says that first, they need to solve the problem with the young man's senior. She points to the car and the romantic scene that almost happened between the two. The orange-haired girl looks at the car and seems to agree with her classmate's plan. The ex-girlfriend states that this should be the first problem to be solved between them. A week passes since the start of the semester, and classes begin at the university. The student hears someone call for his ex-girlfriend and turns to see who it is. The study vlogger runs towards her and calls her with an excited and happy voice. The young man's ex-girlfriend has become a central figure among the college freshmen. She turns around and tells the student to stop following her all over campus. The vlogger says the young man's ex-girlfriend is the only one for her, and he finds the attitude bold. The girl fell for her roommate's cool and charismatic attitude during the commotion. The student's ex-girlfriend says she's not interested and has stopped dressing up like before. She explains that the senior girls offered to help her get ready every morning. The young man wonders why she didn't dress up before, and thinks she didn't dress well. Suddenly, his childhood friend jumps on his back with an excited shout. The orange-haired girl hugs him tightly and calls him Kappa with a happy voice. She asks if classes are over and celebrates that he doesn't have to work at night. The childhood friend invites him to see the flowers that have bloomed in front of the school. He notices that she's being more proactive and is surprised by the invitation for a date. The young man has a brilliant idea and his face lights up with a plan in mind. He then puts up a sign that says, "Instant photos for sale," and starts a new business. His childhood friend is confused to see the young man posing next to the sales sign. She asks what that is, and the student looks at her with a smile on his face. The young man ignores the question about the flowers and starts explaining his plan to her. He tells her that he won an instant camera and 30 rolls of film at an event. Since the camera depreciates a lot, he decided to use it to earn some extra money. The student thanks his friend for the idea, making her happy to be praised by him. The orange-haired girl thinks that, in a way, this is also a type of date. She reflects on how she already knew the type of person he was when she fell for him. The childhood friend shouts excitedly and calls for customers to take pictures with them. She makes him promise that they will go see the flowers after work is done. With a determined smile, the girl thinks that she won't give up on winning him over. Suddenly, a familiar voice interrupts the moment and asks for the price of a photo. The young man and his friend turn around and come face to face with the trio of famous freshmen. The streamer asks if she can choose who she takes the photo with, and the student agrees. In a flashback, the childhood friend remembers the moment she realized she loved him. It was when she saw him together with his ex-girlfriend for the first time back in school. Back in the present, the young man gets ready to take photos of the excited girls. He positions the camera and counts to 2 to capture their perfect moment. The freshmen pose for the photos with the cherry blossoms in the background. The trio is fun and strikes several different poses for the students' photos. The childhood friend also joins them and takes a picture with the whole group. The streamer is amazed by the photos and praises the senior's talent for photography. She asks if he learned somewhere, but the young man says it was beginner's luck. The freshman gets flustered by the compliment and wonders what he meant by that. With a silly, love-struck face, the girl asks if he's flirting with her. The student then comments on how uncomfortable she seemed taking pictures before. He suggests they take a picture together somewhere else if she feels better. The freshman is surprised by the invitation and stares at him with wide eyes, speechless. The young man's ex-girlfriend approaches the streamer and calls her for a private conversation. She reminds the freshman of her promise to buy her tea and cake as an apology. The newcomer tries to get out of it, saying she's busy, but the other girl insists on the invitation. With an intimidating look, the ex-girlfriend says she wants a sweet treat now, leaving her with no way out. The streamer gives in to the pressure and agrees to go with the senior to the coffee shop. On the other side, the childhood friend watches the scene from afar and is confused by everything. The young man's ex-girlfriend notices her gaze and winks with a knowing smile. She encourages her not to be afraid and to be confident to get what she wants. The childhood friend is moved by the support and feels stronger and more determined. With her heart pounding, the girl musters up the courage and decides to confess to the young man. She remembers that confidence is the key for a woman to achieve her goal. The childhood friend calls him, and he turns to listen to what she has to say. She then proposes that they use all the remaining film to take pictures of just the two of them. But Senior Hisu appears right at that moment and ruins the romantic mood for the two. The council president waves at them and approaches with a smile on her face. She says she heard they were taking pictures and brought the whole department. The young man accepts the challenge and says he will take pictures of everyone, even if it takes a while. The childhood friend gets frustrated and grumbles that the senior showing up was cheating. In the end, they take a picture together, and the day ends with everyone having fun. The scene then cuts to a park at night with the cherry trees lit up with lights. The young man is confused by the situation and doesn't understand what's happening there. The next day, coming back from work, he takes a picture of the cherry blossoms with his phone. Suddenly, he spots his ex-girlfriend taking pictures of the flowers and is surprised. The student finds her in a place famous for being a couple's meeting spot. He notices that the girl is more dressed up than usual and becomes suspicious. With a smile and a stylish pose, the young woman takes a selfie with the flowers in the background. The young man watches from afar and sees the girl making strange poses for the photos. He concludes that she's not on a date and wonders what she's doing. What surprised him the most was that his ex-girlfriend had become a model student. His childhood friend tells him that her popularity at college is huge and real. Other classmates also comment on the girl's charm and strong personality. The young man gets annoyed seeing other guys looking at her and doesn't understand why. But the biggest change was that after that night, she stopped avoiding him like before. Now when they meet at college, they exchange greetings normally. The ex-girlfriend says that since they'll be seeing each other often, it's better not to be awkward. Looking back, the young man realizes he was very conscious of her the whole time. But now he understands that there's no more need for all that drama between them. With a smile, the young woman seems to agree with the young man's thought and looks at him. The student concludes that he doesn't always have to be the one to take the first step to get closer. He decides that the best thing to do is to ignore her and go home to continue playing games. The young man notices something strange, and his gaze shifts to the side with curiosity. He sees his ex-girlfriend talking to two suspicious-looking guys in the park. The student wonders if those guys are friends of the girl and keeps watching. Upon hearing the conversation, he realizes they don't know each other and the guys are bothering her. With a smile, the young woman ignores the warnings, and the guys invite her for a drink with them. The young man gets worried about the situation and thinks about intervening to help his ex-girlfriend. He's unsure if he should get involved, but the girl seems to be in trouble there. The student thinks that if he gets involved, he might end up making the situation even worse. Suddenly, the young woman sees him and calls him over as if they were a real couple. The young man is completely shocked and speechless at being pulled into the middle of the mess. His ex-girlfriend introduces him as her boyfriend and asks the guys not to bother them. She hugs him tightly and uses him as an excuse to get rid of the annoying guys. Taesu is completely shocked and has no idea what Mia is up to now. She winks at Taesu and asks him to just play along, telling him she'll owe him one. The guys look at the scene, confused, and ask if they're really dating. Looking annoyed, Taesu calls out Mia's name, losing his patience. Mia answers him with a cute smile and a super cheerful and happy voice. But to Taesu's surprise, the men were actually his seniors from work. His seniors get excited about the news and all Taesu can do is hide his face. Suddenly, his childhood friend, Haeyuan, appears with an ice cream and wonders why everything always turns into a mess. She watches the scene from a distance and can't understand why Taesu and Mia are together again. One of the seniors then pulls out his phone and asks the supposed couple to get closer for a picture. He tells them not to be shy and to cozy up since they're in the early stages of their relationship. Mia gets desperate and tries to shout that Taesu is just an upperclassman from college. But the senior ignores her and forces them together to take a picture of the new couple. At that moment, Taesu firmly and quickly grabs Mia's arm. Mia is surprised by Taesu's unexpected move and stares at him, her face blushing. With a serious look, Taesu tells Mia there's no point in trying to explain anymore. He explains that their seniors are super excited and will twist anything into them dating. Taesu says he knows it sucks, but it'll be faster if they just get the pictures over with. Mia seems to agree with the plan and stays quiet with a thoughtful expression. She then agrees to take the pictures since she owes him one, and Taesu gets annoyed by the comment. Mia gives a faint smile and seems happy about the whole situation. But Taesu says he was just kidding, and Mia is left a bit confused. Then she says there's no special reason, and they're just doing this to get away. Taesu, blushing, replies that he already got what she meant. With his phone in hand, one of the seniors gets ready to take the couple's picture. That day, he took a picture with Mia for the first time in 5 long years. The scene then shifts to springtime at the university, with a much lighter atmosphere. This is the season when love blossoms around every corner. In the hallways, students are already talking about the upcoming club recruitment drive. With that, Taesu heads to the student council room for his media department. When he gets there, he opens the door to find the rest of the crew gather. But the room is dark and filled with gloomy-looking guys who greet the newcomer. Taesu asks why they're all cooped up in there on such a beautiful day. One of them even asks his buddy to set him up with some girls, but then immediately gives up on the idea. Turns out, the communications department was full of people looking to mingle. The attendance of guys at the parties was as high as 99%, and the reason was obvious. But whenever the crowd gets bigger, some guys always show up and spoil the vibe. That's why some people avoid the department's activities because of the upperclassmen. As a result, the parties would end with just the guys wondering what went wrong. So, the upperclassman, Hisu, decides there will be no more drinking parties for a while. Hisu asks everyone to get a grip and for the seniors to watch their behavior. Because of this, the guys in the department are bummed out about their dating plans being ruined. His friends complain that Taesu is a dead end when it comes to dating, but he thinks that's an exaggeration. Taesu thinks to himself that he is interested in dating and holds someone special in his heart. An image of Mia comes to mind and he remembers her with a smile. Suddenly, Taesu starts blushing and wonders why he thought of her out of the blue. His friends notice and ask if he's blushing because he's thinking of something naughty. A memory of what happened earlier comes to mind, and he remembers her hug. Taesu remembers Mia said she'd repay him for the favor and wonders how she's going to do that. One of his friends then calls out to him, and Taesu turns to see what he wants now. His friend asks if Taesu's really not dating Haeyoon, and he denies it once again. His friend explains that he's not asking because he doesn't know, but because Haeyoon, apparently a guy from another department, confessed his feelings to Haeyoon. In her room, Haeyoon looks at the picture with a goofy, lovesick smile on her face. Her roommate, Yoon, teases her, asking if the picture with her is really all that. Yoon continues teasing and asks if Haeyoon was trying to lean in for a kiss earlier. Her 21-year-old roommate, Park Yoon, mentions that she heard about the confession. She asks how many poor souls that makes so far, wondering if it's reached 10 or 12 guys yet. Yoon says she could give the guy a chance, but Haeyoon replies that she barely even knows him. Yoon says Haeyoon deserves someone better, but she shouts that there's no one else like Taesu. With a confident smile, Haeyoon says there's no one better, and Yoon thinks she's exaggerating. Yoon asks if Haeyoon wants to hear the story of how she fell in love all over again, but she refuses. Yoon then asks if Haeyoon is okay with that other girl, leaving her confused. The roommate shows her Dabin's channel and says the streamer was hitting on Taesu, but Haeyoon replies that it's totally fine, and her friend is surprised by how calm she is. She explains that Taesu barely even looked at Dabin, which means he isn't interested. Haeyoon says her crush has always been like that, smiling as she remembers the way he is. According to her, when he likes something, he can't take his eyes off it. With a goofy smile, she concludes that Taesu is like a fool when he's focused on something. Haeyoon then gets serious and says the person she's really worried about is someone else. Just then, an image of Mia appears, showing that the ex-girlfriend is the real concern. Scene cuts to Mia talking with Hisu about what Taesu said. The two discover they go to the same diner, and Hisu gets super excited. They then high-five and celebrate the coincidence while Taesu watches from a distance. The girls greet him, and Taesu asks why they were talking about him.